How the Sausage is Made, Part 1. We're going to discuss some key terminology related to digital images. First of all, what is Photoshop? Primarily, it's a bitmap image editor. And so that means we're working with pixels. Pixel is short for picture element, and it represents the smallest unit that a computer screen can display. Technically, there are subpixels, but that's handled by the operating system. Those refer to individual red, green, and blue elements that make up a single pixel. Not all monitors arrange these elements in the same way, so that's why we don't deal with those in Photoshop. It's something that your operating system and your monitor, they talk to each other and they find out, okay, here's how we need to light up the subpixels to make up this pixel. Photoshop also does have some vector elements to it. Vectors are mathematically described lines and curves, and they can involve things like paths and shapes, as well as any type, any fonts that we have. Those are all vector elements. However, there's an important distinction between vector and bitmap that will come into play in Photoshop, and we'll talk about that. So pixel-based, what does that mean? A lot of times someone will tell you they have a 1200 pixel image, and unfortunately that doesn't really tell you very much. Image size alone does not tell the whole story. You need to know how those pixels will be used. So image size refers to the height and width of your image in pixels. What's more important is the resolution and the document size. So the resolution is the number of pixels per inch or centimeter if you're in other countries, but we're here in America at Colors of the Canyons, so we'll talk about pixels per inch. The standard in the printing industry for images that we want to print with a nice continuous tone image is we want those to have a minimum resolution of 300 pixels per inch. Because when you print something out, you don't want to see the pixels. So you want to see, a nice continuous tone. You don't want to see these chunky blocks. So 300 pixels per inch is generally what we found is a successful way of achieving that result. 72 pixels per inch is the original size of the Macintosh screen. That was released all the way back in 1985. Computer screens have come a long way since then, and higher resolution screens are readily available. In fact, most Macintosh monitors, I think they're going up to like 306 pixels per inch on some of the higher density screens that they have available. So we're getting close to the kind of fidelity that you can get on the printed page with resolution of monitors. But as a general standard, when you're doing web graphics and such, we're working with 72 pixels per inch. Document size is the height and width in actual units. So in other words, inches or whatever. So think about an 8x10 portrait photo that you might have, or 12 centimeter by 18 centimeter. Those are the measurements together. Resolution and document size are what you need to consider to figure out how many pixels you actually need in your Photoshop document. Making pixels from vectors. One of the funny things about Photoshop that a lot of people don't really understand, they think it works a certain way, it actually doesn't, because you do have these vector elements in it, but those vectors will always be rasterized. And let's talk about what these two terms are. Rendering, that's the general term. It means transforming computer-readable objects, for example, a 3D scene in Maya, to one or more images. The term that we use more often in Photoshop is called rasterizing. And that's a specific term that means transforming a vector image into a pixel-based image. And that's what we do in Photoshop. And even if you have type and a shape that is created with vectors and you don't have any pixel elements in your PSD file, when you go and put that in InDesign and send it to the printer, what's going to be sent to the printer is pixels. If you want to work with vector images exclusively, Photoshop isn't the program for that. you want to use Adobe Illustrator. That way, when it gets sent to the printer, it's going to stay as lines and curves, and it won't rasterize before it goes to the printer. So that's going to give you the best results if that is your workflow.